Hello, today we will be exploring working in the non-clinical healthcare positions with University of Virginia alumni. I'd like to welcome our guests, Chets Background, the co-founder and CEO of Care and Wear. Welcome, Chet.
Thanks, great to be here.
I'd like to welcome Stephen Kern, project manager with Privia Health. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
And also welcome Chris Whiffen, practice director for Mavens Consulting Incorporated.
Hello.
And I'd also like to welcome Carmen Clipper, corporate strategist for Centera Healthcare. Welcome, Carmen.
Hello.
So let's dive right into it. Why did you choose a career in healthcare? Let's start off with Carmen.
Sure. So I have almost 20 years now in what I would consider healthcare strategy and business planning field. While at UVA, I was a government and Spanish major, oddly enough. And what got me interested in health administration was I was a peer health educator, and I spent a lot of time at the Student Health Center, and I actually did an independent study there. And I found some mentors. Some of the staff over there became mentors to me and encouraged me to look into that field. And I actually decided to go right from undergrad to graduate school. And I have a master's in health administration it was called MCV when I was there. Now it's VCU, which is in Richmond, which was 2 years on campus and a third year of what we call an administrative fellowship or a residency. And I've pretty much been in planning and strategy since then. I was a consultant for more than 10 years. I spent a few years with Kaiser Permanente of the Mid-Atlantic States, which is a large national health plan, and I've been with Centera for almost 4 years in their strategic services department. So I was someone that sort of had entertained the idea of a clinical career like nursing or physicians, and I quickly came to realize that I was very interested in the business side of healthcare, resource planning, resource allocation, population health, all those types of things. So that's my background in a nutshell.
Thank you. And Chet.
Yeah, so I guess I'm probably the least qualified out of everyone here. I was a former banker and consultant, and about 3 years ago had friends and family diagnosed with cancer, literally told to wear socks on their arms while they were receiving treatment, and thought that really sucked. And so started kind of working with my now co-founder, who is the wife of my best friend from business school, who is in the fashion industry, to try and come up with some sort of solution. And as we were doing that, kind of took a step back and realized whenever you go to the hospital, everything you're given is a reminder of what you're going through. So whether it's cancer, diabetes, a broken bone, even tennis elbow, everything's been focused on function and not on how it looks or how it makes you feel. And so we're working on building a brand in healthcare. And my mom's a doctor. A lot of mentors and people that I looked up to have been in healthcare. I actually knew Carmen right when I graduated and was like a little baby. And now sadly I have gray hair, whatever's left. But it's an amazing opportunity to get back, and I guess that's why we do what we do every day.
That's so cool. So you create, I guess, healthcare fashion.
Yeah, exactly. So we just taught a class at Parsons School of Design where we're redesigning the patient gown so that your backside's no longer exposed. And we've had the opportunity to work with a number of fashion designers as well, which is super cool. As you can barely tell, I don't really know much about fashion, but the people around me definitely do.
So it's like, hospital gowns brought to you by Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren and Prada.
Yeah, exactly.
Very neat. Thank you. So Chris, why did you choose a career in healthcare?
So I started consulting about 9 years ago, and it was with a small company. We had I was the fourth person, and we started with basically doing any work we could find, and we got into pharmaceutical CRM deployments pretty early on. And about 3 years later, as I had been doing that consistently, we decided as a small company, that it made sense for us to specialize and focus on life sciences and more specifically pharmaceuticals. So I've been doing that now for 9 years, and our company has been doing it exclusively for 6 years. And, you know, as a small company, it's been a huge benefit to be focused.
Thank you. Stephen.
Yeah, I actually started out as an engineer. I was a biomedical engineer at UVA, and I quickly realized that I didn't want to do engineering to be a biomedical engineer. It involved a lot of pipetting and test tubes and that sort of thing, and that just wasn't for me. I stumbled into a job with a company called Epic that did electronic medical records, and that's how I ended up in the healthcare world, approaching it from the technical side. And as I continued along my career with Epic and then Privia, I realized that I really enjoyed the business side of healthcare, kind of as Carmen mentioned. And I'm actually going to be going to business school this fall at UNC Chapel Hill, and I'm going to plan on concentrating in healthcare and maybe finance or operations or one of those.
Well, congratulations on getting into that program. That's great.
Yeah.
So what were your biggest challenges in your first year of work and working in healthcare? Carmen.
Well, I've had 2 first years. My first real year was my residency, and back then, which was 20 years ago, and I don't know if it's still the same, we were encouraged to do what they called a traditional rotation style residency. And I was interested in rural medicine, so I grew up in a rural area. So I did my fellowship it was Pitt County Memorial, which was the teaching hospital for East Carolina University School of Medicine. It's now got a different name. And I rotated literally through dietary, through the cath lab, through HR, through medical records. So it was a great learning opportunity. I found the hours very challenging. It became very apparent to me, hospitals never close. Mm-hmm. So when you decide to go to work for that provider side, particularly a hospital-based provider side, they never close. And I was on call. If the toilets went out on 4 West at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was up there trying to get the toilets back. You know, if the generator went down. So I would say that was challenging, sort of figuring out for myself, what did I want from a work-life balance perspective? And actually, because of that, I chose, even though I had the opportunity to stay at that hospital, I sort of had figured out that operations wasn't necessarily, for me, that sort of constantly putting out fires, I didn't find particularly rewarding. And but I so admire those wonderful operators that do that. And I've learned in my career to support those people and do what I can to help retain those people. My first actual real job was in consulting. And I would say for me, I quickly realized that I enjoyed that kind of balance of independent and group work. Again, it was the work-life balance became an issue for me. There was lots of travel, there were long hours. And I was sort of like, oh, wow, I gotta figure out, how do I set my own boundaries? So I always enjoyed colleagues, work content, ability to advance, like all that stuff I found very rewarding. I will say for me, most of the challenges in my career have been around work-life balance and setting boundaries. And I'll share this because I get a lot of women that do from UVA particularly reach out to me. I have 2 children that are 10 and 7. And it's, and I think my husband would tell you he has an issue with it too. So I'm not saying it's just a female only. But for me, those have been the challenges, but I have found healthcare to be extraordinarily flexible from that perspective, particularly given what I do. A large amount of what I do is independent analytical work that I can do on my own schedule. And then what I have to accommodate is presentations, board meetings, facilitation, working with a team. But for me, it works well. And I think those are important things to figure out for yourself as you advance through your career, the kind of lifestyle you want.
That's smart. So do you work from home or do you work from home?
I do. I actually work a good % of the time from home, and then I commute because Centera owns 12 hospitals. 11 are in Virginia. 1 is in northeastern North Carolina, and they're throughout the state. It's the largest hospital system in Virginia. And what I do is, as needed, I travel to our various hospital sites. But other than that, I'm working from home, which again works really well for me at this stage in my life.
Work-life balance is a very hard thing to kind of figure out what you're willing and wanting to do.
Right.
Thank you. So Chet, how about you? What were your biggest challenges in your first year in working in healthcare?
Yeah, I think everything was a challenge. I think first and foremost is selling it to hospitals. So hospitals notoriously take a very long time to get in the door, even when you know people that get you at the highest of levels. And so UVA is actually a perfect example. They're one of our first customers, and it took 2 years to close that account. And that's even though I sit on 3 alumni boards, the Bicentennial Commission, ran my reunions. I think I'm pretty obsessed, would probably be the understatement of the decade. And still getting them to place the PO took a really long time, even though we had a lot of people writing emails on our behalf. I think the second is going from, for us, we work with clinicians on every product. And so going from getting the nurses who are working with us day in and day out to design and develop our products to the actual purchasing people has taken quite a bit of time as well. I kind of think that it's been beneficial that we're not from healthcare, because we can just walk in and pretend like we don't know what we're doing, because we really don't. So it's not like pretending. So we'll just walk into a hospital and get an audience with very senior level people that, quite frankly, people in the industry probably takes them a year or 2 to get in. And so we've definitely used that to our advantage, just kind of playing dumb, being super casual. Carmen can tell you how goofy of a person I am in general. And so, like, walking in with my backpack, obviously not looking like your normal sales rep, definitely helps as well. But I think overall it's been a really, really fun process, and it's been an amazing learning opportunity for us. And we're now, we're in a number of hospitals, including UVA, the VA, the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, et cetera. And so getting really big brand name healthcare systems has caused other ones to suddenly want to move a lot quicker, which has been great.
So based on your enthusiasm for the University of Virginia, are you covered in UVA tattoos, or are you designing UVA, medical apparel? Like, can I put on a gown that makes me look like Caveman?
Yeah, so UVA would charge you a lot of money, unfortunately, to do a Caveman suit, but we do have the rights to all of Major League Baseball, so you can wear your favorite baseball team on your arm. And if you go to UVA Health and have a PICC line installed, you actually get a UVA branded PICC line cover. And then I personally have my UVA ring. I still wear a UVA belt. So I'm pretty well decked out in UVA gear at all times.
I love it. That's great. So Chris, what were your biggest challenges for your first year in healthcare?
Well, as a consultant showing up to a pharmaceutical company and trying to advise them, when you're hired in as a consultant, they want you to be the expert. And your first project, you are not the expert. You are the least expert person in the room. And I was an expert on the technology and learning consulting. It's very different today when I show up and, I can speak for 3 minutes and they say, fantastic, we want to work with you and nobody else, or, we want to make sure you're on the project. And it was different. My first project, I loved the team and I thought, no, things are going pretty well and I'm figuring it out. I heard 2 years later that the client reached out to our partner and said, hey, this guy doesn't know pharma. I think we need to get somebody else.
Oh.
And and thankfully one of the people I was working with said, give him 2 weeks and call me and then let's talk about it. And 2 weeks later, the guy, and I didn't know about this until years later, and he said, he's figuring it out, he's great, we're not going to change anything. And it was just, hard work and figuring out how to talk in that environment. The terminology, is what we talk about with inside of pharma. We're talking about healthcare professionals and formulary and prescription and getting things, the different legal regulations, and just understanding that and the acronyms, being ready to engage. That was the hardest thing, because the rest, you're dealing with people problems and people figuring out technology. It's a lot of fundamental stuff. But if you don't know the terminology, somebody says something and you blank stare, or you ask a lot of questions. It's great. It helps out, but it also, as a consultant, undermines their confidence in you if you ask too many questions about things that are just fundamental to the industry.
Thank goodness you had a sponsor, an advocate on your side saying, give him a chance. I mean, it sounds like that's something that is really critical in your first year, that you do have someone that supports you and is wanting you to succeed.
Yeah, and this was somewhat of a unique position. So I was in a lead role as a new person. And now that, that was when we had 4 people. You had to do that. Now, our company, we have 60 people. We would never put somebody in that position where they're the primary person talking to a client, right? There's always a lead who knows it and has been doing it. But sometimes you get stuck and, doing your homework before as much as you can. Very, very helpful talking to people, right? This was something I found out the week before. Hey, here's your new project. It's pharma. Good luck. And,
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Stephen.
Yeah, I think that my first year out of college was a lot like Chris's, in the sense that you come in as this person right out of college. You don't really know the industry that well at all, and you have to learn things very quickly. I think the hardest thing for me, especially in the software implementation side, was learning how to sell and really to get buy-in from folks, especially a wide variety of stakeholders. As an engineer, I learned how to design a solution and how to implement a solution, but we really never learned how to sell something and to get people to go along with it. And that's something, especially in the provider side of healthcare, there's so many different voices, so many stakeholders, and usually health systems are not as top down in an authoritative way as other industries might be. So I had to learn very quickly how to get folks in the room to agree that a solution is the right solution, not just to see that it's the best one, but to actually buy into it and be willing to stake a claim in their own success. And that was pretty tricky.
Thank you. Can you describe a typical day or week? Let's start off with Stephen again.
Oh, so do you want right out of college or what I do today?
Either way.
Okay, well, I'll start with what I do, what I did with Privia. As a project manager, doing implementation and onboarding integration, I had the luxury of being very meeting and socially prevalent industry. So a typical day starts with me planning out my work day or my work week. I figure out what meetings I need to go to, what things I need to plan ahead for, what deliverables I need in advance for those meetings, and then planning and executing on those. So I learned very quickly a lot of good organizational skills, a lot of good time and project management skills. Usually I at least look at my project plans once a day, figure out what things are low-hanging fruit that I can knock out, what things are items that I can delegate to junior team members, and what are items that I need to reevaluate and potentially revisit. So every once in a while I'll sit in on some more corporate strategy sessions and figure out where we're going to roll out a new service line for the company. But day to day, it's a lot of putting out fires and making sure things are on time and on budget.
Thank you. Chris, what is a typical day or week in your position?
I don't know. It's been 9 years and I'm still trying to figure that out. So like last week, I was at a conference in Philadelphia. I went to Connecticut with a client and was home on Thursday night, worked from home on Friday. I do a lot of things. So I travel a bit, and it's probably 20% of the time in a given year at this point. We do a lot of remote meetings, kind of like this, although we don't always use video. So that's great. That from a quality of life perspective, like Carmen was talking about, 20%, I mean, you could be working with a company not as a consultant and travel even more than that. So very, very reasonable. But and that just depends on projects and timing. Like I say 20%, sometimes I'll have a quarter and, out of the 13 weeks in a quarter, I'll travel 10 weeks And then sometimes I have a quarter and I'll travel twice, probably for a total of 4 days. And then in weeks, I do so many different responsibilities, even as our company has grown, from writing contracts and doing kind of pre-sales or talking with customers, what I spent a lot of time early last week doing, to implementing and managing projects, leading, developing solutions, training. Like, it's a really wide variety, and that's the stuff we do with clients. And then internally, I help build up our organization, training our consultants. It's great if you like change, it's fantastic. And I like the challenge of being good at a lot of different things. You figure out where you fall on the spectrum of being a generalist or a specialist. And, I fall somewhere in between, and it takes a lot of effort and it's a lot of challenge. And I love that. My previous job, I worked at a university as an IT director, and it was easy, frankly. There was I knew everybody. I had been there for a while. I just, it got to be where I could do it in half a day. I could be pretty good at it. And in 6 hours a day, I was really good at it. And in 8 hours a day, I was better than I should be at it. It just didn't make sense. So switching over to consulting, where, boy, you can screw up something new every day. And every project you will mess up on something that you never thought of before, and some things that aren't in your control, and trying to figure that out, I think, is really interesting. But that makes my week, or my days very variable, right? Lots of meetings, but solution building and so forth. So constant change.
Thank goodness it's interesting though. I mean, you're never going to get bored. You're always looking at opportunities to discover something new. And that's so often why people leave, is because they've kind of figured it out and things are stagnant and you're not able to grow. So that's so excellent.
It's been 9 years and I still love it. And one of the things is when we, each time we have a client and we ask about, hey, can you travel? We say, can you travel this week? We don't say you will be traveling this week. And that is different at a lot of organizations. So that's made this much more attractive and palatable.
So what's the most fun place you've gotten to travel to?
I've been several places, but when you're there for work, it's not as fun. Thankfully, I've been to many of these places for fun as well. But I've been to Tokyo. I was in Tokyo in December. I've gotten to Moscow and Sydney and Barcelona for like 3 months. So some really great places. And not all of my colleagues have gone to all these great places. But yeah, it's wonderful. Just make sure you extend, because when you're there for work, you're sitting inside an office and you might as well be in New Jersey.
Excellent. Thank you. So Chet, how is your typical day or week?
Yeah, it changes every day. So today we actually had someone just join our team. So we're doing a little bit of orientation right now. And then we'll have everyone kind of get together and talk through a lot of the company. I spend a lot of time on the phone, so dealing with hospitals, with partners. So right now we give 10% of our sales back to nonprofit foundations. So working with foundations and kind of just talking with them about messaging, etc. And then jokingly, I like to refer to myself as #fashion CEO, because I get to spend a lot of time with fashion designers as well. So today we actually have a reception at Parsons where we'll be meeting a bunch of kind of famous designers as well as students that we've had the opportunity to work with over the past semester. So it kind of varies every day, which is a little nuts. This morning we were kind of looking over pipeline. Later today we'll be looking at our product and manufacturing. So wearing a lot of hats, which I think is really fun and also really scary, but it helps when you don't know anything to just know nothing about everything and get to see everything at the same time. And I guess that's what we've been doing on a day-to-day basis.
And it sounds similar to Chris in that you're constantly learning and figuring out new things, and is it interesting?
Yeah, exactly. I think I spent 4 years as a consultant right out of UVA, and really loved that part of the job where you're learning very different things every day and dealing with different situations. And I think running your own startup is probably even more so that case, where a lot of things are kind of getting made up on the fly. Although if I ever talk to Carmen's colleagues at Centara, I would make sure that they think that I know what I'm talking about, and everything I've been saying is like tried and tested. But no, I think it's pretty fun. It's pretty cool because everyone you talk to knows that you're a startup and knows that they're kind of helping you set policies. So it's been pretty interesting. I think one thing that a lot of startups complain about is hospital payment cycles and how long they take to pay you. And we get everything paid within 15 days. And we just kind of were really fortunate where our first couple of hospital clients paid us within 15 days, like they said they would. And so now that's just standard practice. And a lot of hospitals are like, well, we want to pay you because we're worried you wouldn't have money because you're a startup otherwise. And sorry for all the background noise. It seems everyone has decided to stand outside and scream at the top of their lungs. But that's part of being at a startup space. So actually, I can turn my screen a little bit and you'll see a bunch of different offices. This is one of the WeWorks where literally every single office, instead of being someone's personal office, is a whole company. And so you have somewhere between 6 and 10 people in every office just sitting together as their full-time company office.
Thank you.
So a lot of energy.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Carmen.
I can echo a lot of what Chris and Chat said. My week, Monday to Friday, like if I looked back at Friday, I looked back, maybe half of what I thought I was going to be working on is what I worked on, and the other half was completely unknown to me on Monday. When we're interviewing new analysts or strategists, we share that with people because we find in at least our department, and I think this is true for a lot of strategic planning departments, you have to be very agile and flexible because at any given time, about half my workload might be a 6 to 9 month plan that might be around a certain service line for the system, around some sort of new facility. So that's probably taking up 40 to 50% of my time, and it's a 6 to 9 month process. The other half is some sort of standard type reporting that I'm providing to senior leadership, along with my questions, findings, like we might need to investigate this, what's going on. And that's about 20%. And that other 30%, we call it the gotcha. Like you get in Monday morning and the CVP is like, I heard so-and-so doctor is retiring. What will that mean for us, right? And then you're spending like 2 days figuring that out. Or I heard so-and-so is closing their OB unit. What would that mean for us? What if we put an urgent care at Carmen Lane? Whatever it might be. So there's a lot of very quick turnaround. We need an expert analysis on what you think this would mean and how it would work. And I do a fair amount of analytical and data work. Not all of it is that, but we are expected to be able to do that. But I like Chris and Chad, I think we're saying, I very much enjoy the variety. I have found I am not someone that likes that rote week where I'm doing the same thing every week. And in healthcare, there's new technology. And so sometimes it'll be like, we've recruited this surgeon and he wants this piece of equipment. What is that? Well, none of us know. So we go in and we start to figure out how much does that cost? What does it mean? Does it increase our number of patients? Would it decrease the number of patients? And I really, really enjoy that. So I think someone that likes that kind of constant learning, project variety, I really like that. And I've learned that about myself. So Chris and Chad said, I really don't have a typical week. It varies constantly. Yeah.
Thank you. So do you have any recommendations for how someone could prepare for and succeed in getting a job in healthcare? Carmen, let's jump into you again.
Okay. Well, I think, and I've been talking with career services for a couple of years now about this sort of concept of non-clinical, us helping our students understand that there's a huge employment opportunity in this arena. Excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So for me, at least for what we're looking for, I'm sorry, that's like the page thing.
No, it's okay.
It's fine. It's fine. So what I would tell people is analytical skills. We need really the ability to sort of take data and tell me what it means and what's missing. We kind of have a hard time with that. So I would say basic analytical skills. And I think there's such, when you say a career in non-clinical healthcare, I think this is a great example. You've got Stephen, who's doing practice management, IT, that kind of a thing. Chris is doing consulting. Chat is doing what I would consider almost, not to put you in a box, Chat, but what we would sort of call that more retail, customer-centric side of healthcare that we're seeing with innovation and entrepreneurial to sort of meet the patients where they are. So I encourage people to do a lot of talking. I actually encourage students to get on the VAM and query those things and just talk to several different alums to figure out what they might like. So I encourage informational interviews, research, and that shoring up your basic analytical skills is never going to hurt you, because some kids do come out of school and they don't have that. They might have done their requisite math and science requirements, but they're not prepared to do kind of the basic skill set that we need. So those are my pieces of advice.
Thank you. Chat, so what recommendations do you have for students, how they can prepare for and succeed in getting a job?
Yeah, I 100% agree in terms of looking up on like who's online or whatever it's called now. Both of my, like every job I've ever taken actually has been with the help and assistance of an amazing number of UVA alumni. I didn't know what consulting or investment banking were in high school, and I kind of chose my career path by talking to different UVA alumni. So a bunch of them told me you should be a consultant based on kind of how I like solving problems and doing different things every day. And so I first did IT consulting, which now I really shy away from anything IT related. But at the time I was like dealing with coding and things like that. I was like, I don't want to do this. And then talked to another bunch of alumni who were like, no, you need to go be a strategy consultant. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I ended up doing that. And then while in business school, talked to a bunch of them about investment banking, and for some odd reason decided to do that. And then when we started our company, kind of talked to a bunch of people about the idea that we had, and just being able to get tons of advice. It's a great way, honestly. Never ask for a job, but a lot of people, if you ask the right questions in an informational interview, can get you in touch with the right people for jobs. We actually got investors who we were just talking to about like, hey, we want connections to these people, and talking to them about like what our idea was and making sure we were on the right path, where they were like, hey, can we invest in you guys? And we're like, sure. Like, why would you ever say no to someone giving you money? And I think in general, the power of those around you, and I think what makes UVA such a special school is everyone that's there wants to help and wants to be a part of your journey. And all of us have had tremendous amounts of help ourselves, and so we kind of just want to pass the torch and help others. And so not being afraid to ask. Everyone on our team, all those jokes that I spend half of my time talking to undergrads, or I went to the University of Chicago for business school and students there. And it's, people do that for me, and they continue to do that for me. And I think it's only fair that I do that for others.
Thank you.
Totally.
So what recommendations do you have, Chris?
Well, and I hear a theme coming up, and I've found this to be true. Seems like several of us have attended or are planning to attend graduate school, and in business, it sounds like the common theme. I did the same, and I will say before that, with my music major, I was not in high demand. I had, the Virginia degree was fantastic, but I had to prove myself every time, and it was tough. And people would say, oh, well, we'd love to give you this job, but you need, more education or more experience. And after I got the graduate degree, people are asking for me. That shifted the supply and demand focus. And as soon as I was, I have an MBA with a concentration in information systems, every person I've talked to is like, yeah, we want you. And that was a huge change to having the skills that these companies want. And, and today that's pharmaceutical companies are my clients. It just, it helps tremendously. And just having the skills that you want. And the other thing, and to tie on to what some other folks were saying, I will say every job I've gotten since undergraduate has been due to a relationship, and not from filling in an application online, not from joining a big program where they say, oh, here's some kind of opportunity. I'm not saying that never happens, but whenever I'm doing, in the VAM program, we talk about build a relationship, have somebody that's an advocate, and ask for help. Like as Chet was saying, people are willing to help you. You just need to ask and say, hey, can you help me? I know you work in pharma. What do I need to know? What should I think about? Like, there's so many people who are willing to provide assistance. And I think the biggest thing is people don't ask. They just don't come up. They don't do the research, find the people that can help them. And there are a lot of people, and there are some people who are nodes who will connect you with other people and can be really, really helpful.
Absolutely.
In navigating your way around this.
It's very smart. Thank you. And Stephen, any additional recommendations?
So of course, networking and the things that each person has mentioned so far is very important. The thing I'll add is that I think students coming out of college definitely need to consider and be cognizant of the flavor of healthcare for a job they're applying for. Healthcare isn't just one thing. We've got the retail side, the corporate side, the consulting side, physician management. And so each of those flavors is going to, have different just characteristics about the industry, different values, different culture items. And so considering those and really weaving those into your narrative when you're selling yourself as a product, you need to have a narrative, and that's just general, recruitment advice. But weaving those sub-industry specific values into your narrative will go a long, long way in making you stand out.
Thank you. So what do you like most about working in healthcare? Carmen.
Oh gosh. I mean, I really do love what I do. I think I'll echo what some of us said. I really do love the project variety that it allows me and the constant learning that has to occur. One of the things that I really enjoy, and I think this goes to what Stephen said about the flavor and figuring out, for many people, I would say their hospital or their healthcare is a little bit of a piece of a touchstone of their community. There's usually themselves, a friend or a family member has likely had interaction with either a physician or a facility in your system. And I like that. That was one of the things that when I was a consultant that I realized, I have that attachment relationship side to myself, and kind of going in and out of people for me was hard. And I've realized I've enjoyed being part of the Centero system because they are very rooted in their communities. In some of our communities, we are the only hospital. We own a small rural hospital in Halifax County, Virginia. It's the only hospital in the county. And I actually do a lot of work with them. And that's a challenge. Rural hospitals are challenged in our country right now. So I very much enjoy that. So I would say I enjoy sort of the constant learning environment, and the variety and the importance that it has to most people, which I think is evident with everything we hear from politics, to budgets, to things of that nature. It's very critical. And I think, as Chat mentioned, my sister is currently battling cancer, and she's being treated at MD Anderson, which has been my first experience with one of those sort of destination facilities that's super specialized, and their ability to be customer centric is phenomenal. And you're grateful for places like that. So those are probably some of the reasons I really enjoy healthcare.
Well, and I hope everything goes well with your sister.
Oh, thank you very much. People have been incredibly supportive, and she's a fighter. So we're blessed that way. Yeah.
Great. And Chet, what do you like most about working in
Yeah, so my mom is an anesthesiologist. So I always thought, typical Indian guy growing up with a mom as a doctor, you think you're going to become a doctor. And I saw left colon get removed in 11th grade for a project. And when the nurses came to me instead of the patient, I realized that probably wasn't my future calling. That and not really enjoying biology classes. And so ended up kind of going really far away from it and focusing on a lot of like tech and media and telecom and consumer, I guess, a little. And then kind of when we saw this, it honestly was just an opportunity to help loved ones. And as we saw, wow, this is a much broader opportunity. We kind of took a step back and realized at the end of the day, we always talk about wanting to help others and be there for our loved ones and anyone else that we can really help out. And that kind of, I guess, gave us the initial impetus to start working on this. When I talked to a bunch of my UVA mentors, they were like, worst case scenario, you try and help patients for a couple of years. Like, that's not the worst thing in the world. And I think it's so amazing and inspiring to get messages from our customers all the time, just saying thank you and for doing what you do. And I mean, we, at the end of the day, aren't doing anything massively complicated. It's not rocket science. We're not coming with the next cure or anything like that, but being able to make a difference. And our goal is to always allow people to get back to living their lives. So no matter whether you have cancer or diabetes or broken bone or whatever, just going back to being yourself. And some of our customers are in the worst experience of their lives, and ultimately some of them will just have like a little boo-boo, I guess. But at the end of the day, just helping them feel like people again is kind of why I want to do it and what we're really excited about.
I love that. It's such a big impact.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Chris, what do you like most about working in healthcare?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of our company mottos is a combination of what Carmen and Chet just said, which is love what you do and make it matter. And we, in healthcare and, for us, again, specifically in pharma, some med devices, the work we do matters to people, right? We're helping these companies produce life-extending, life-saving therapies, drugs for people that, and everybody has family, if you're not on medicine, but you have friends, family, or in the hospital have gone through stuff, it's very real for everybody. And, pharma gets a bad rap sometimes, and that's not the people we interact with, right? I mean, I interact with dozens of companies and hundreds of people who are all trying to do things that are impactful for people. That part is fantastic. I had an opportunity to work for a company that made video games for casino gaming in Indian reservations, a company that used to be in Charlottesville. And the people seemed great. The mission was not really something I was excited to support. And that was around the same time I got connected with my current job. And just night and day. And previously, having been in education, I was like, great, this is something I can get behind. And I think having an industry like that you align with the values and you think it's providing something that is a public good is fantastic. And as Carmen mentioned, there's so much to learn. It's huge, right? This field has so much going on, and there's a commercial side and research and development and hospitals and extended care and drug development. Like, there's just piece after piece as you keep peeling away the layers of the onion, and that's really exciting. Like, there's just so much that you could try to figure out and learn about it.
Thank you. And Carmen, were you going to jump in there too?
No, I totally agree with that. Like, I share those sentiments.
Wonderful. Stephen.
Yeah, so I think, what everybody said so far, of course, makes sense. I share the feel-good part of the mission. When I worked at Epic, there was a motto that said, "We're heroes helping heroes." That, just because you're not the one treating a patient doesn't mean you're not contributing to the mission. That's powerful. One thing that's unique for me, I think, is I love the fact that healthcare is a bit of a mess. It's incredibly complex. It's incredibly bureaucratic. And to me, it's, you know, it's an engineering challenge, and I absolutely love that. Speaking to the engineering students who might be watching this, I use what I learned at UVA every single day. You know, I'm not designing a device. I'm not, you know, working on a widget, but I'm putting together a system that has a ton of moving parts, a ton of failure points, and I'm designing safeguards around those and helping to iteratively make the next design better. So to me, it's pretty special.
Thank you. So what is a last bit of final advice that you have for UVA students interested in working in healthcare? Stephen.
I think, you know, if you're attending UVA, you probably understand the concept of being a well-rounded student, and that absolutely applies to your career as well. You know, the fact that you might be interested in the business side of healthcare means that you know, really one thing you can do to help yourself in the early stages of your career are reach out and try to learn about the things where you're weak. So for me, like I said, that was on like the side of sales and really the soft skills. I've got the technical background and I've got the industry knowledge, that's fine. But if I can't convince anybody that I'm saying the right thing, then it's pointless. So, you know, if you're coming from a more communications or economics background, maybe dive into the science. And if you're coming from the science side, you know, figure out some of the communication pieces and how to be more strategic with your interactions with folks.
I think that's great advice. I work in marketing, and so I had all the sales stuff and all of that background, and I had to learn a lot of technical things when I got into my position. So I totally agree with you. Chris.
I'd say to pick one thing, I'd say be prepared. So when we go to hire people to be a consultant, we ask them to prepare a case, basically go configure an application and do what we do, and then present it back to us in the same way we present to clients all the time. And I tell people, I'm very explicit about this. I say, it's going to take about a week or two. A week or two meaning 40 to 80 hours of your time to prepare for this. So it's an investment on your side, showing your commitment and that you're going to show your ability to us. And after we watch these presentations, and sometimes we are severely disappointed, I will go back and ask people, how much time did you spend preparing on this? They'll say, 8 to 10 hours. I say, we discussed this. I said explicitly how much time you should spend to put together something that is thoughtful and well done. And people don't do it. You know, I say, wow, you know, if I could spend 40 to 80 hours and get a great job because of that work, so worth it, right? I mean, just incredibly worth it, that investment. And to do exactly the job that you're going to be doing, to figure out that I really want this job also. I find that to be really useful. And it's the piece that when people come in prepared, we know, great, they're going to be able to prepare for our clients and deliver a fantastic experience for them.
Thank you. Chet.
Yeah, I think my general motto in life would be never give up and be persistent. So when I was applying to consulting firms, I went to Vault.com's guide of 100 firms and literally applied to every single firm. I think, you know, you never know who you're going to get an offer from, etc. And same with banking, probably not as much. I only applied to 2 firms. But kind of now I run a company where we are really focused on helping those that are never giving up and people that are inspired to live their lives. And I think you as a 21 or 22-year-old need to really focus on showing just how much energy and passion and excitement you're going to bring, because that's what everyone's looking for. At the end of the day, no one's job is really rocket science. Well, unless you're a rocket scientist, no one's job is rocket science. But what I always hire on is this someone that I want to be working with at 3 in the morning if I have to be, that I don't mind sitting next to and mentoring and teaching, or knowing that I'm going to have the trust and faith in them. So like when I was leaving Goldman to go into the startup space, I kind of thought, okay, I have the worst background ever. I'm a former banker and consultant. How do I differentiate myself? I created like a PowerPoint deck on things that I knew. I was looking at like mobile payments, so like created a mobile payment overview of what the industry was like, etc. And that way I would take it to people and say, hey, I know what I'm doing. This is a little overview. And oh, by the way, I'm looking for a job. And I think what we found is anyone that's willing to take the extra mile, especially if you're interested in the startup, as a founder, I will always talk to anyone that is giving me free work. And so that's a great way to kind of differentiate yourself and rise above the millions of people applying every day. I think that was it.
Okay.
I mean, I could go on for ages, but that I'm trying to limit it to one.
Okay.
I think Amy's frozen.
Oh, is she frozen?
Oh yeah, Carmen, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, sure. Oh, because it is recording. You're right. I was thinking she had to facilitate. So I kind of have three things that I always tell people. One is be honest. So be honest about what you know, right? And be honest about what you want to do. I tell, there's nothing, I mean, my friends and I will laugh now about some of us, that first thing they did where they sort of elaborated something or they weren't honest with themselves about what they wanted, and then they spent 15, 18 months being miserable. Mm-hmm. So I say that. Another thing I say is that you probably will have to put your time in, and you're not going to come right out and be managing people. That's part of it. If someone offers you an opportunity to learn, as long as the job provides you an opportunity to learn, take it, right? And you should take the opportunity. And then a third thing I say is something that a boss told me like years ago that people sort of laugh at, but I will never forget him telling me this. And he was like, good manners will get you 90% of the way. Mm-hmm. And I tell students that I'm like, respect people's time, be polite, respect people's assistants, respect their assistants' time, and thank you notes and things like that go a long way. So those are the three things that I sort of share. Probably not with older people, but when students from UVA call me, I always share those pieces of advice.
I think it's still good advice for older folks too,
Yeah.
And Chet, I'm sorry about the technical difficulties that I had at the end there. Hopefully I didn't cut you off for everybody else. Everything froze on my computer, so thank you. Well, I'd like to thank you to all of our guests for joining us for today. You were all absolutely amazing and very inspiring to me and I'm sure to a lot of our students. All of our guests today are mentors in Virginia Alumni Mentoring. University of Virginia students can log on to alumnimentoring.virginia.edu now and connect with other alumni for additional insights about the process of starting a career in their specific field. Thank you for joining us today. Make sure to check out more career and industry insights on career.virginia.edu. We will see you next time.
Wow.
Bye.
Go Who's.